Joining us live in Washington, D.C., getting set for the 114th Congress, Barbara Comstock, getting sworn in today. Joining us now, 9th District Republican Congressman Morgan Griffith. Congressman, great to have you. Happy New Year.
Great to be with you. Hope all's well.
All is fabulous. Okay, we were complimenting you all day. I hope you don't mind.
Certainly don't mind compliments.
Okay, yeah, right. You don't mind compliments. And as you know, we're the Straight Talk Express. We tell it like it is. I thought the statement you put out last night, quite candidly, in explaining why you had decided to vote for Speaker John Boehner today, was exceedingly well written, and it made a lot of sense to me. And so I've been talking about it for several hours here on the air, off and on. Can you just share with our audience what your thoughts are? Because you're one of the most conservative congressmen on the Hill. You opposed Crom the Bus. You've been at odds with the Speaker on a litany of issues and with leadership. So explain why you're voting today for Boehner.
Well, and I do have a lot of disagreements with Boehner, but it didn't just start with the Crom the Bus. It started earlier than that, and I was very upset back in August that Speaker Boehner didn't realize, actually it was the end of July, 1st of August, didn't realize that before we went on the August break to go home and talk to people in our districts, we needed to have put out a statement as to what we felt was appropriate on immigration. Finally, we were able to force that issue, but it wasn't Speaker Boehner who wanted us to do that. It was the membership itself. And at that time, I felt like, okay, if a viable candidate is offered, I will have to give very serious consideration to voting for somebody other than Speaker Boehner. And nobody popped up. Then we had our meeting November 13th. No one was nominated to run against Boehner. Nobody said they were running against Boehner. We, of course, won the elections about a week earlier. Then the Crom the Bus came up. A lot of people were upset, including myself, the way it was handled, about some of the things that were in it, and that was December 13th. Again, no candidate pops up until last Friday. Had someone come forward, I would have had to give it serious consideration. But you can't expect to run the United States House of Representatives, set up an organization, have the committees, look the way that you want them to look in your leadership team as you move forward by announcing a candidacy less than 5 or less than 3 days beforehand. I haven't heard from either of the two candidates that are announced. There's a third person who I understand's name may be placed in nomination today. All of whom are good people, and in fairness, I would have had to give serious consideration to voting for them had this happened earlier. And understand that while it's not a national issue, it would have been a state issue. I once ran for a leadership position, and I will tell you, John, we had our ducks in a row. We had laid the groundwork. We knew what we were going to do. Back in '99, we won the majority for the first time in the history of Virginia. And my team and I were sitting in my office into the wee hours of the night, putting out FedEx packages of what our plan was going to be to lead Virginia and why I thought I should be the majority leader. The next morning, a member of the House of Delegates got a call about 2 hours from my home, and I said, I'm sitting at a coffee shop in your hometown. Can we talk?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way you build an organization to lead a legislative body. Now, I'm not saying that the candidate should have called me, but there should have been a ground game, and they could have started. I know we were in the middle of the holidays, but if they were upset enough on December 14th, we left town on December 13th. I guess Crom the Bus was the 12th or the 13th of December. Certainly by the 15th or 16th, phone calls could have been started that said, hey, what do you think about me running against? I heard no such chatter out there until Friday. And you can't organize, in my opinion, and lead without having that organization. And what does that do if we were to nominate somebody different today or to elect somebody different today? Then that person is going to be behind There's no way they can be prepared. And our battle ought to be with the Democrats, the liberal Democrats in the Obama administration. And that's where we need to take the battle. Now, will John Boehner take it aggressively enough? We'll have to see. They keep saying now that we have control of both houses. They will. I have serious concerns about that. And so that's why my message, I said I have hope and trepidation. I am fearful that we'll have more of the same. I hope that it won't be that way. But I don't think in the last days before you have the election, you actually have to start passing legislation, and your committees have to start meeting, that it's the time then to say, hey, we're going to switch leadership teams. And that's my problem.
So if I can interpret what you're saying or paraphrase it, Congressman, basically you're saying, look, post-Cromnibus bill, that's the cornerstone. That's at the crux of what got so many people upset, was that Cromnibus package that many conservatives thought they were sold out by leadership and that they were misinformed by leadership. One of the things that John Boehner did say, which was a matter of record, he said, we're going to conduct business in the House in a different way. You were supposed to pass a bunch of appropriation bills on all these topics that all got rolled into one. So a lot of people said to themselves, what was the point of the Republican victory in November? We got the same thing that we'd have had if it was Speaker Pelosi. But what you're saying is, that was December 13th. Today is January 5th. A challenge could have emerged 2 days after that or 3 before Christmas. It could have been organized. And now what you have is basically a Congressman Gohmert gets up on Fox News, announces a candidacy on Sunday. I think Ted Yoho in Florida might have announced it in a local paper or something on a Friday. That just doesn't feel good when you're talking about, as Robert Hertz said, the third most important position in the United States. Is that my understanding?
Well, that's correct, and it's more important than just doesn't feel good. It's a question of, are you going to be ready to hit the ground running? Because we need to start fighting Obama's policies today. And, if you have to suddenly put together your leadership team, your leadership staff, are you going to go back in and reorganize and change all the committees because the Speaker has a big part in putting together the committee structure? If you're going to do all of that, that means we're probably delayed at least another 3 or 4 weeks in getting started. We're planning on voting on some issues this week, and we need to get started with that. We need to fight there. But, it looks like that just those who have put their names forward, and they're good people, but they just don't have a plan to lead our conference or the nation. And you've got to have a plan, even if it's a weak plan. You've got to have a plan when you're dealing with an institution this large and a country as big as the United States of America. You can't just come in and say, hey, here I am. That's part of the problem with Obama. I don't think he had a real plan. He had a vision of what he wanted to get done, but he had no idea how to govern. Thus, even when I disagree with him and he gets his way on something, he botches it because he doesn't really know what he's doing.
Right.
Why would we want to do the same thing to the House?
How much pressure, Congressman, has leadership in putting on members to back them? Has it been the normal stuff, or has it been over the top?
I haven't seen anything outside of the ordinary. I'd like to have your support kind of stuff. I hear reports that some people feel they're being pressured. I have not seen that, so I'd have to let others, speak to that. But there's always that sort of Damocles that's hanging out there. But had a serious, planned-out challenge been made to Boehner earlier, I would have been willing to take that risk, and I believe there are a number of others who would as well.
To Congressman, let's go to what's on the agenda now in the coming weeks. Keystone Pipeline, repealing Obamacare, assuming that John Boehner gets reelected, and I think he is. I'm not sure today either Yoho or Gohmert combined can get to a second ballot. Maybe they will, could be close. Assuming we go forward with the leadership we've got right now, what happens in the next couple of weeks? What do you guys really want to do here?
Well, Keystone XL Pipeline, and then I think we want to come back in with a number of the bills that we passed last year and sent over to the Senate that failed to get off of Harry Reid's desk. Taking the 30-hour work week and taking it Obamacare. They decimated part-time employment. The Commonwealth of Virginia, among other employers, have said, okay, you can't work more than 29 hours a week now because of what is in Obamacare. So we're going to roll that back. I would look to see the medical device tax get rolled back in the next few weeks. But we're going to pick up a lot of bills where we already know that the House will pass them, and we're going to send them over to the Senate. And obviously, in our first couple of months, I'm hopeful that we'll get to rolling back some of the authority of the EPA. And I would have liked an opportunity, and this is where the cromnibus comes back to bite us in the ankle, or higher up, however you may see it. I would have liked the opportunity to have taken a whack at the EPA budget and done so earlier. Now we won't get a chance to do that until sometime this summer, but I think we'll be looking at that as well and rolling back some of their authority.
Congressman, let's roll ahead to the summer. The bus bill, except for the some of the things in it that benefited certain companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield that people find infuriating. When you just go to the spending package, it expires in September. Another thing that really was driving conservatives crazy is that you're supposed to pass all of these appropriations bills separately, right? Vote on them separately. I mean, that's the way the Founding Fathers saw it. That's the way the Constitution was designed. It was not designed to put 1,700 pages into one, give everybody 2 days. We've already been over that. Are we going to get back to that? Or because, I mean, if conservatives are upset now, I couldn't imagine the backlash if Boehner and leadership attempted to do another cromnibus type thing when the one they did runs out in September. Are we going to get back to running Congress the way it was meant to be run?
Well, I hope so. I mean, we won't get it all back in one fell swoop. The Speaker has pledged to get us back to regular order, and in fairness to the Speaker and the leadership team. Over last summer, we passed 7 of the 12 appropriations bills out of the House and sent them over to the Senate. The Senate did not act on it, and so we didn't pick up the last 5. So that was more than had been done in the last number of years. I couldn't tell you how many it was before I got here that we took up individual appropriations bills on the floor. So that indicates that there is a willingness. It's not just lip service to get back to having individual bills. And that's a good process. And hopefully we'll see a lot of floor action, a lot of open rules, which means that all amendments can be brought forward. The leadership is promising more of that. I'm pushing for that. And we'll see that as we go forward this summer. They're promising us that's where they're heading. And last summer's action indicates that's where they want to go. So I'm very hopeful on that part. We'll see what happens in the Senate. I would say it's kind of interesting that there hasn't been any last-minute attempt to knock out Mitch McConnell, where it would take fewer votes than it takes in the House.
That, you know what? That you took the words out of my mouth. That was going to be my next question. It is interesting to me because Mitch McConnell, incoming majority leader, said that his objective was to just govern. But it is interesting to me that why there's no challenge there. I guess maybe, again, because he didn't have his hands on the cromnibus bill the way Boehner did, but he backed it. So where's his challenge?
Yeah, it's just interesting, but politics is always interesting, and you do the best you can and hope people understand you're trying to do the best you can.
Common Sense News Time, 8:27 here on the John Fredericks Show. Congressman, let's get to foreign policy. Last night, last night in the middle of the night when the news cycle, the Obama administration was going to be dominated by this leadership challenge to John Boehner, they released another 2 prisoners from Guantanamo Bay, the prison, Gitmo. Obama's trying to just shut that thing down. Does that trouble you at all that there's just this kind of willy-nilly approach to doing things?
Well, it does bother me that there's a willy-nilly approach. Of course, the administration is very good at taking advantage of the chaos currently in the House. Hopefully that will be resolved today. But they're very adept at taking advantage of a situation to try to move something along that they know would upset the American people. They've got the folks who are most upset, who would be most upset with that, paying attention to the shiny object over here, which would be the leadership fight of sorts, and they pull another maneuver. And that's why we need to focus on fighting the Obama administration and their policies as opposed to having an internal fight within the conference. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have disagreement. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't occasionally have fights. Mm-hmm. But we need to keep our eye on the main focus, and that's stopping the policies of Barack Obama that have been so devastating for the United States.
Well, that's going to be the final word, Congressman. Again, we appreciate your being with us. This is our third-year anniversary month. You've been a mainstay on our show. We really appreciate your willingness to share your views with our listeners across Virginia and for your candor. And, again, I just want to point out, I thought the statement you put out last night in explaining your vote today for John Boehner was one of the best pieces I'd seen from anyone. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right.